Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, welcome back to this second day of the this Future Mobility Conference. It's a pleasure to see so many people back here again. Yesterday, it must have been a good day yesterday for you all to have come back. So thank you very much for your time and attention. We've got another exciting day planned for today, but I thought we'd just spend a couple of minutes recapping on what we heard yesterday as a way to bridge into the presentations this morning. And I think we spent much of yesterday talking about policy regulation and the strategy of how countries, geographies, the world is evolving to accommodate electronic vehicles. We started yesterday by hearing about how ESMA is already developing standards for the UAE around electric vehicles, as well as how those standards are also being developed internationally as well. And we also spent quite a bit of time yesterday talking about how governments and other stakeholders are incentivizing the uptake of electric vehicles and starting to get a glimpse of the future as to how that might play out with I thought a very interesting presentation on what's happening in Norway, who've obviously been hugely successful in encouraging the uptake of electric vehicles, but are now starting to experience and think about how to deal with the second differential, if you like, of challenges that are posed by having a much richer fleet of electric vehicles on the roads. But as well as some of the big picture discussions and debates yesterday, which are obviously crucial to how this industry will play out, I thought it was also interesting to start to touch on some of the more human elements as well. So one thing I wasn't expecting from yesterday was, for example, to see a slide up here about the etiquette of using charging stations. And we know that incentives will play a huge role in driving electric vehicles, but actually the user experience will also be important as well. And things like the etiquette of using charging stations will probably be more of have a more impact at the user end than perhaps we might initially consider. So as I said, today we've got another terrific day of presentations from both local and international speakers. The focus today and this afternoon is much more on market, business, user behaviour of electric vehicles, and also starting to look at some more forward-thinking and futuristic ideas around electric vehicles. So once again, I'd encourage you to participate. I thought we had some excellent questions yesterday. I'd encourage you again to challenge our speakers with your questions and comments. It's always a much more interesting session if people are interactive and are challenging what's being said on stage. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Engineer Fahad Hareb, who's the Director of Air Quality at the Ministry of Environment and Water. He has 13 years of private sector experience, but has now switched his focus to improving environmental conditions in the UAE. And I think he's taking a very appropriate and possibly scientific approach, which is to measure first by putting in place a monitoring strategy for the UAE for air quality, which will be used to update the current regulations and policies. So he's here to talk about, again, as a nice bridge from yesterday, the incentives or the consumer incentives for UAE electric vehicles in the UAE.
Can you hear me? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellency, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the introduction. I'd like to, of course, go through the incentives that we're looking at towards trying to get people to think, consider, and hopefully even purchase these environmentally vehicles. This is something quite big for the UAE right now, something very new, I think, for the region, and something, of course, that the UAE always wants to take the lead on when things like this come up. And I believe I've got one slide. So what I'll be going through is, of course, first question, why incentivize these vehicles? I'll be taking a look at some of the international incentives that have been implemented, the international achievements through those incentives, and of course, why implement these in the UAE? What would be the benefits? Next, we'll be taking a look at the Ministry of Environment's vision on supporting environmentally friendly vehicles and the incentives that have already initially been accepted to facilitate here in the region. Support the change. I think as a mechanical engineer, it gets really exciting for us from going from one technology, which is the internal combustion engine, to now having a plethora of 6, 7 or more. You know, you're not saying anymore, okay, I drive a Honda Camry. No, it's a, sorry, Toyota Camry. It's a Toyota Camry hybrid or something else, and it gets more technical and more interesting, especially for people like me. We have different, it's the internal combustion engine, the HEVs, the PHEVs, REEVs, BEVs, and FCEVs. These were all discussed yesterday. I think you're all familiar with them. Of course, they do have a lot of advantages, still some disadvantages, but I think these will be overcome with time. Now, of course, the first question, why government support? When we start to look at why the government should get involved in things like this, it's a big question. And of course, for me as the director of air quality, one of the biggest things is the air quality. So where vehicle emissions, including pollutants, are deposited wherever an internal combustion engine goes. These are usually, of course, on your streets, right in front of your home, around your schools, around your work areas. This is where people and pedestrians walk around and spend most of their time. Mitigating the impacts to human health. This is something the WHO really look into. They talk about all the emissions and its effects on human health. This is something that severely impacts the government when they have to put up a lot of money to support all this, to take a look at funding all these medical side of initiatives, as well as making up for lost working days and lost working time. As mentioned yesterday, one of the big drives are the carbon footprint reduction. This is quite a large aspect that is affected now the world globally. I'll be taking a look at, I'll show you a chart in the next slide. Reducing the dependency on fossil fuels. I think this is something really big. When you start going into the dependency right now we have in the transport sector on fossil fuels. And the alternatives that are now available will definitely help reduce this. It'll help countries that do not have any reservoirs or fuel reserves, let's say, to better make use of the fuel instead of using it just in your internal combustion engine, which gives you maybe 20–30% efficiency out of it. Because you can use it to produce materials and other products which maybe are of more value and can be exported by that country. Countries that do have fuel reserves, of course, why sell the fuel as a raw material as it is? Or why sell it cheaper within the country? Why let's say, why subsidize it? Like what's happening here in the UAE. Now, luckily, we've gone into a deregulated market. It's come at a good time where the prices have been quite low. Nobody's really felt the difference yet, but we'll see what happens in the future. Other benefits, of course, when you start to really look at specifically, let's say, electric vehicles, where you can start using the cars as support to the smart grid, where you can be charging on off-peak hours, offloading that into the grid on peak hours, and it really opens up new business opportunities to private sectors, more jobs, etc., etc. As I mentioned the chart, these are the EU OEM fleet emission targets that have been set by the EU. You can see everybody needs to reduce. This was taken from a study done by McKinsey. Now, I'm not sure about Volkswagen and some of its partners anymore, how much more they have to reduce from the numbers that are here now. But as you can see, these are quite aggressive. It means that these guys need to put out vehicles on average that reach these grams per, CO2 per kilogram numbers. It's not an easy number to achieve. That's one of the drivers that the manufacturers have. Again, why does it come down to governments? Well, firstly, the governments have the tools. They have the abilities to stimulate this change. And they can really set the pace. So it's not up to us to let the private sector run with it and see where they go. No, we need to support this if this is something that will be good for us, good for the environment. Providing incentives, of course, towards environmentally friendly vehicles is expected now by the public. And this is clear from what we've seen around the world, where countries that do have the incentives, there is a drive where not people are kind of waiting. And of course, it's usually financial incentives that these people want. Now, but why? Why again? When you bring an innovative product into the market, it is generally quite expensive for the manufacturers. A lot of research, a lot of time has gone into it. And of course, the sales, when the sales are low, and the cost will definitely be more significant. Premiums are higher. So this is where the governments need to step in to offset this by a positive policy framework to support the sales and eventually increase sales volume, which will in time improve, of course, the technology, and the new technologies will bring down the cost to competitive levels. Now, when this will be, we're not very sure yet, but I mean, there are a lot of visionaries out there today, even universities. There are studying motors, the efficiency, the controller efficiency. Of course, the battery technology is by far moving a lot faster than expected. Previously, this was not the case, just because internal combustion engines were the dominant force and no one was looking at other solutions. I believe electric mobility will support and make an important contribution towards ensuring sustainable mobility. And this is something that we really believe in here in the UAE, something that our leadership is striving for. Now, taking a look at the government incentives that have been set out in various countries. So you can see most of them have exemptions from purchase taxes, VAT, road tolls, as well as registration tax and annual circulation tax. You have reduction in registration taxes, green owner tax exemptions. In France, they have the premium under the bonus malus system. And in the UK, of course, as well, you've got some premiums there. You see the word tax almost everywhere. Fortunately, we don't have an equivalent system here, which makes it easy for us to follow a lot of these and make it a quick decision for us to quickly take things into effect. Just quickly going through the various countries. France, they provide an incentive of up to 25,000 dirhams when buying an a friendly vehicle. They provide incentives up to 15,000 dirhams when you swap your internal combustion engine for an environmentally friendly vehicle. They exempt fleets from taxes, which range between 1,000 to 25,000 dirhams. Free registration of vehicles. Other incentives, free public parking for residents, 2 hours for tourists. Downtown parking slots are available, and the use of priority lanes, which I believe was under study at the time. Norway, details were gone into yesterday. Exemption of almost everything. It's got positives and negatives, as mentioned. The US, every state actually has its own incentive program. They've been allowed to choose whatever they feel is necessary. Of course, California is pushing, Colorado is really pushing, but they have federal exemptions of up to 30,000 dirhams. Emission testing license fee, free home chargers in several states, free public parking, free charging stations with free charging as well, carpool lanes. Then India has as well pushed forward with things. Now they are offering financial support on vehicles up to 8,500 dirhams, and even on motorbikes, which of course are hugely popular over there, 1,750 dirhams. Various states have removed their taxes, or they provide rebates, and Delhi has also provided a 15% subsidy on the base price of select cars. As seen yesterday, Norway is definitely taking the lead when it comes to vehicle sales. This information with 2014, I believe we saw data yesterday that showed that Norway had exceeded 70,000. I believe their initial plan was to hit 50,000 by 2017, and they managed to achieve that in March this year. So the question is now, do we continue? What happens? But again, it is expected for them to continue. Countries like, I'd like to just give an example on Germany. Why haven't we seen increases there? I think Germany took a different route. Instead of providing subsidies to consumers directly, they're actually providing the subsidies to the manufacturers to develop research and so that they can hopefully have cheaper vehicles in the future, more efficient vehicles in the future. And they're not looking at we're not looking at a direct subsidy. I think it was since they didn't have too many cars to sell at the time. Now, environmentally friendly vehicle incentives for the United Arab Emirates. First of all, some of the drivers to this. As we all know, the UAE's vision that was set in 2013 has also a National Agenda 2021 for the air quality targets. This is one of the initiatives, or let's say KPIs, that I'm responsible for, where we need to achieve 90% of the days in the UAE to be under the WHO guideline levels. It's quite a tough challenge here in the region, but I'm happy to say that with the setup now of the monitoring stations throughout the UAE, we can track and we can see what's the situation and also identify the sources. Another initiative is the UAE's Green Economy, the Green Growth Initiative for Sustainable Development. You have several things that were highlighted here, but the third point there, the environmentally friendly transport, or the so-called sustainable transport, is one of the main things that we're looking at today. Now, how are we looking at going about this? Of course, it is a challenge, as mentioned, because we do not have things such as taxes. But the first thing that needs to happen, I believe, is the identification of what is an environmentally friendly vehicle. We've been working closely with ESMA to set standard, to understand what sort of vehicles would come into play here. Now, whether it's battery, full battery, whether it's plug-in hybrids, whether even it's CNG with the route that Abu Dhabi is going, we need to still identify what exactly an electric vehicle, or so let's say an environmentally friendly vehicle is. And this is what is going to be happening, I believe, in the next few months together with ESMA after this conference, once we get more information to hopefully secure that. And as ESMA mentioned yesterday, once we manage to do that, hopefully push this out to the GSO. If it is accepted, great. If not, I believe the UAE will still push forward. Now, the basis for identifying what an environmentally friendly vehicle is, I think people first need to understand where their car sits right now. How fuel efficient is their vehicle today? How many of you have gone into showrooms today to see, okay, I'm going to go buy a Nissan Patrol. How efficient is it? How environmentally friendly is it? How many grams of CO2 does it emit per kilometer? I haven't seen this information here locally, and I'm sure if I were to ask a salesman, they probably wouldn't be able to give me a lot of information on that today either. I think this is something the region is lacking. Awareness really on understanding the importance of energy. We've been lucky here in this region. You have water on tap, electricity on tap, no electricity shutdowns, no issues whatsoever with our infrastructure. And UAE's infrastructure is very solid, and we're very lucky to have that here in the country. But I think we've taken it for granted. And this is where the governments now need to step in to really understand and, of course, educate and make things more aware as of what's happening. And I believe this starts with a label that you will see, like you already see today, as done by ESMA, where they've set standards on efficiency in terms of energy efficiency. When you buy a washing machine, when you buy a cooker, when you buy a refrigerator, when you buy an air conditioning system. If you go into any shop today, you will find a sticker with an ESMA label on it highlighting the efficiency of that. And I believe something similar is soon to come for vehicles, which will educate people in understanding more about what they are buying, what their expectancy of operational costs will be once they purchase these vehicles. Because as we all know, if we're looking at hybrids, if we're looking at electric vehicles, if we're looking at the alternatives that are available today, the cost is higher. But this is easily outweighed when you start to look at the operational costs. For example, an electric vehicle, you could save up to 10,000 dirhams a year on fuel savings alone. You will save a lot of money on maintenance and service. There are a lot of benefits that people will start to realize. We're the Ministry of Environment and Water. We're studying, of course, under the National Agenda 2021 KPI, it aimed to improve the UAE's air quality, and the Ministry of Environment and Water have been looking at various sectors in parallel to enable a multifaceted approach to improve the UAE's air quality, to achieve and sustain WHO air quality guideline levels. One of those includes the ministerial decree, the cabinet decree, to be drafted by the Ministry of Environment and Water together with the local authorities to encourage the use of environmentally friendly vehicles. The decree is currently being drafted together with the support of and in collaboration with Ajman Municipality, Sharjah Municipality, Ministry of Interior, Federal Customs Authority, as well as a couple of transport authorities. Now, why these specifically? As a ministry, as you know, it's a federal body. We cannot set prices, we cannot force any of this. It needs to come from the local authorities to support and push these initiatives. The concept of polluter pays is the basis of the discussions, and one that is being welcomed by all authorities. In the center, you see the fuel efficiency label. This is where we really hope, together with ESMO, we can set something that will be accepted. Now, ESMO, of course, will be looking at this together with the manufacturers, with what's available, and in discussion with various parties to set this up. There's quite a few concepts that are going around. Now, of course, we can start with the top left corner there, looking at initial registration and annual registration fees, which would be dependent on the rating of your vehicle. So, if you were to buy an efficient 4-cylinder, let's say Toyota Camry, which is known to be very efficient, your registration fees would maybe be less than your registration fees if you were to buy a V8 7-liter pickup truck. So this is where the polluter pays principle comes in. Same looking at it on the purchase price. So if your vehicle doesn't have, or has a bad rating, you may expect to pay slightly over what was previously expected. We're looking at import tax exemption or reduction on vehicles. Of course, it's related parts. We're looking at setting up an environmentally friendly vehicle fund. We're looking at allowing electricity and water authorities to provide privilege rates on two-way meters, and as well as the installation of renewable energy devices. Offer preferential parking spots for locating charging stations in private areas. We're looking at free parking in government public areas. We're looking at encouraging banks to provide a green vehicle finance plan, as well as insurance plans. Road tolls to be dependent as well on the ratings. And of course, somehow we need to be able to identify, thus we need to create a label on these vehicles to identify what is an environmentally friendly vehicle for the authorities. That's what I have for you today. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much indeed. Any questions at all? Yes, one gentleman at the back. Can we get a microphone to the just standing up, please? So while we're waiting for that, I had one question. On your last slide, you mentioned an environmentally friendly vehicle fund.
Yes.
What's that? What does that comprise of?
The concept behind that is, let's say, if we're looking at a polluter pays principle, if you were to pick up a vehicle that is maybe an F rating or G or whatever lower rating, maybe expect to pay 3,000 or 4,000 dirhams on top of that vehicle, or wherever that comes from, into a fund. Now, why a fund? In order to provide an incentive at the end of the day, the government needs to put forward money to people, let's say, that are looking at environmentally friendly vehicles. Where is this money going to come from? And this is where we're looking at this fund to be able to collect the fees from registration, from the vehicles that are highly polluting or higher polluting, to be able to use this money to put forward to people who are looking at purchasing environmentally friendly vehicles. So, as we've seen, I mean, if we're looking at reducing parking, if we're looking at reducing the import taxes, removing things like that, we'd be looking at a 6 or 7% maybe reduction on the price. It's not enough from what we've seen around the world. You know, we need to drive for somehow 20%, 30%. We need to look at higher numbers. And this is where this fund, I believe, will play a really critical role. Who knows, we may be able to use this for other things other than vehicles in the future as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think we've already got a question there.
My name is Mohammad. I'm the technical manager for
So I need to speak up a bit, I think.
My name is Ahmed Dardas. I'm the technical manager for TSG. First, I would like to thank Engineer Fahad for his presentation. My question is, we are speaking about the future and electric vehicle emission, but I have a question, what about the current scenario? We are still using the parameters and the emission, which is I think the degree was came in early 1990. So we are using emission limit in Dubai for CO as example 4.5%, and for HCC we are using 800 parts per million, which is beyond the new limit in Europe or in other countries. I want to ask you, what is the role of Ministry of Environment to set up the parameter for the current scenario, for the existing vehicle in Dubai and other Emirates, which is around 2.5 million vehicles? Thank you.
That's an excellent question, and this is definitely something that we've been looking into. As I mentioned, this is a multifaceted approach. And what I wanted to look at here specifically was the incentives. But yes, I fully agree with you. The current numbers that we have are way over what should be accepted. I mean, my brother is a classic car collector, and he buys and trades these things. He brought in a 1965 Camaro Fastback, and it passed. Shouldn't have passed. I mean, he starts the car, black smoke comes out of this, and he said, "Oh, the first time, yeah, they didn't pass it." And I thought, "Oh, okay, was it because of emissions?" He said, "No, they couldn't find the VIN number." Okay. So after they found it, was it okay? He said, "Yeah, sure, everything was fine." So I fully agree with you there, and I think this is something, again, we're working together with ESMA. Enoch had done a fantastic study on this, and they looked at reducing. He mentioned that if they reduced the 4.5% down to 1%, we would only lose 8% of the current vehicles that are in the market. So you can see there is a big gap from what is currently there in terms of the limits and where we need to be. So yes, we are studying this as well. This will be a multi-pronged approach to really start to improve this. Thank you for that question.
What a question.
Yeah. I will add before that one point for the level of the CO2 in the current situation of cars. Now ESMA is updating the levels of the CO2s, and we will have like a committee from the authorities, as Mr. Fahad said, because this should be from all the authorities in UAE, to approve these new levels of CO2s for the used car, which is already in the world. So this will come soon, inshallah. My question to Mr. Fahad, these incentives, what you present, is very useful, and we need it to support our programs in electrical vehicles. But these need supporting from all the government's authorities. So how long we are far from this discussion with these authorities to have these incentives in use? Thank you.
Great question. We have already started. We have been discussing with Ajman municipality. They have welcomed the concept, and they've already provided us verbally that yes, they will waive the parking fees in the government sector. This is the first great step. Sharjah municipality offered us the same, and they welcome it. We'd spoken to RTA. They welcome the polluter pays system, so they are also on board. We've spoken with the Ministry of Interior already. They as well are on board and very excited about the registration and taking a look at this. We have also spoken to the Federal Customs Authority, and they definitely welcome this as well. So we are already taking steps forward to achieving this, and we hope that once ESMA has set the standards, we hope to also be ready at the same time so that we have everything out and ready by the time the standards are in place, incentives are available. Banks are also really interested to get involved here, and the support from them to provide special financial plans, as well as, of course, the money that is available to advertise and create awareness. I mean, something was mentioned yesterday, a lot of these incentives are hidden. Where do I find them? How do I know about them? And this is where we'll see the support from the banks really drive this in the future for us. Honestly, we haven't spoken to any insurance companies yet, but there's a question still on the manufacturers to see what sort of they can do and what we can take a look at. But yes, that is correct, yes. It is also, because it all depends on what happens with the vehicle afterwards. I agree, insurance is definitely something we're looking at as well.
Okay, I think we've got time for one more question, yes.
Walid Al-Sagaf from GSO, yeah. I have a comment regarding the level of emissions that emitted by the motor vehicles. Actually, of course, we have a regulation that started from 1986, and we are very proud of that, and I think it has a role for limits the pollution in the region. The problem of enhancing the emission regulations actually is the fuel specifications in the market. You cannot have a good regulation for emissions without the suitable fuel. Maybe now it's in the United Arab Emirates has a better now fuel specification, and because of that I think we are cooperating with the authorities here that to have the Euro 5 for the diesel vehicles. But starting from 2018 model year we will implement the Euro 4, which is actually require the 50 ppm of sulfur content, which is not yet available in the market, even here in the United Arab Emirates as an average. Some of the producer here maybe they have this fuel specification, but as a whole market still not yet. Anyway, my just question to you, Mr. Fahad, that what do you think about adopting the cafe system in the United Arab Emirates? What's happened in the United States that actually the action done to the manufacturers themselves, because they who should be blamed about the high emissions or the high fuel consumption, and that should not be to the consumers themselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Firstly, on that point regarding the fuels available here in the country, we do actually have the best fuels available here. The less than 10 ppm sulfur is the standard today in the country. And I know that ESMA, together with the ENOC, Dubai Police, RTA, Ministry of Interior, do conduct visits to distributors here in the region to ensure that this is the case. So I personally know that since, I believe it's July, it has been implemented, or even since last year it's been talked about, and the fuel has been available since sometime last year even, in terms of the diesel. Our gasoline is, I would say, sort of the best that is currently available globally. It is of course unleaded, and the sulfur contents of that, of course, is nothing when you talk about gasoline. For your question regarding the cafe system, yes, we've been discussing this together with ESMA, and they are taking a look at this together with the standardization and the labeling. So this is definitely something we've considered, and as you mentioned, I know Saudi Arabia have adopted this system as well recently. So it is something we're looking at, and we'll see really depending on how things go. We have a handful of manufacturers here. Yes, it makes it a lot easier, not manufacturers, say distributors here, it makes it a lot easier for us to control instead of trying to manage the public, but we'll see which way the discussions go.
Thank you very much indeed. I think we have time for questions, but if there are any more questions afterwards, I'm sure Jennifer will be around in the break. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.